The band that I have, the team around me, are just the best ever. They give you that sense of security. Roger Waters once controlled everything in Pink Floyd. He decided what they played, how they looked, even who they could talk to. But the worst betrayal happened in secret courtrooms during the 1980s. Waters tried to legally destroy Pink Floyd and leave his bandmates financially ruined. He compared them to fake Beatles. He spied on their recording sessions. For years, Gilmour said nothing. But now he's revealed how Waters' obsession with power turned their brotherhood into a nightmare that haunts them still. David John Gilmour was born on March 6, 1946, in Grantchester Meadows, Cambridge, a village known for its close ties to the university. His father, Douglas, was a senior lecturer in zoology at Cambridge University, and his mother, Sylvia, worked as a teacher and film editor. Their home was only 2 miles from the historic spires of Cambridge, a world surrounded by academic brilliance. But David was never drawn to that world. By the age of 13, he had begun skipping classes to play guitar in local coffee shops. On his 14th birthday, he chose a $30 Spanish guitar instead of the textbooks his parents hoped for. School reports from 1960 described him as musically obsessed and academically negligent. By 1962, he was sneaking out of his bedroom window at night to jam in Cambridge folk clubs, returning home at 2 in the morning with sore fingers and parents who were losing patience. Before joining Pink Floyd, Gilmour had an unusual career that few fans know about. Between 1967 and 1969, he worked as a fashion model in London, earning $15 per shoot when the average weekly wage was $20. His 6'1" frame, sharp cheekbones, and striking blue eyes landed him work with Carnaby Street boutiques and underground magazines. He modeled psychedelic shirts, velvet jackets, and even women's scarves for experimental campaigns. The money allowed him to buy his first Fender Stratocaster in 1968, the guitar he would later use on Comfortably Numb. Photographer Terry O'Neill confirmed that Gilmour earned more than $500 from modeling, enough to purchase professional amplifiers as well. Although he later admitted that he felt embarrassed during photo sessions, he learned how to use body language to express emotion, a skill that became part of his powerful stage presence. His life changed long before Pink Floyd when he first met Roger Sid Barrett in 1957 at Cambridgeshire High School for Boys. Both were 11, and they connected immediately over their love of guitars. Barrett taught Gilmour advanced fingerpicking that he had learned from his father, a jazz musician. By 1962, the two were inseparable, spending weekends in Barrett's room experimenting with homemade electronics and tape loops. During those years, Gilmour also saw the first signs of Barrett's illness. Sometimes his friend would sit silently, staring at guitar strings for hours without playing. Their friendship collapsed in 1968, when Gilmour was asked to replace him in Pink Floyd. Barrett felt betrayed, believing that his closest friend had stolen his band. Their last real meeting came in 1975, when Barrett appeared unexpectedly in the studio, overweight by 40 pounds and with a shaved head, asking Gilmour quietly, "Why did you steal my band?" Though Gilmour rejected the academic path of his parents, he was far from ordinary in school. In 1965, Cambridge University admissions officers were astonished by his performance in modern languages. He scored 95% in French exams and spoke fluent Spanish and Italian during interviews. Professors expected him to thrive. But instead of taking part in academic discussions, he filled notebook margins with song lyrics and chords. His French professor, Dr. Margaret Williams, recalled that he could translate complex poetry with ease, yet preferred to practice guitar during tutorials. He memorized entire collections of French verse, not for essays, but to use the rhythms for musical phrasing. This ability later influenced Pink Floyd's sound, as he used the patterns of different languages to shape the emotion in his guitar solos, making them feel almost like spoken words. At 16, in 1962, he formed a band called Jokers Wild. They auditioned for EMI Records, where talent scout Dick Rowe, the same man who had once rejected the Beatles, dismissed them as amateur noise and advised Gilmour to find a real job. The rejection cut so deep that he stopped playing guitar for 3 months and sold his amplifier to pay rent. Bandmates remembered him crying after the audition, convinced his dream was over. In 1965, he joined a blues rock group called Bullet, earning $2 per night playing Cambridge pubs. Their first gig at the Red Lion ended in chaos when drunk customers threw bottles, forcing the band to escape through a back window. Gilmour later said the experience taught him how brutal the music world could be. Determined never to face that humiliation again, he began practicing up to 12 hours a day. Everything shifted in December 1967, when Pink Floyd, struggling with Syd Barrett's declining mental state, invited Gilmour to join as a fifth member. The idea was not to replace Barrett, but to support him on stage, as his erratic behavior was making live shows impossible. Gilmour, only 21, suddenly found himself standing next to a childhood friend whose mind was slipping away. By then, Barrett was often unable to perform, sometimes staring blankly at his guitar during entire concerts. One of the most haunting moments for Gilmour came during the recording of See Emily Play in 1967. Barrett had invited him to the studio, but when Gilmour arrived, his friend looked at him with no recognition at all. Later, Gilmour said, that was when he changed, marking that exact day as the moment Barrett's mind truly broke. Though the song went on to become Pink Floyd's first top 10 hit in June 1967, those close to Barrett knew it was also the beginning of his complete breakdown. For a brief time, both Barrett and Gilmour performed together, but the arrangement collapsed after just 5 shows. Barrett would wander aimlessly around the stage, sometimes joining in, sometimes not. The plan of keeping him as a behind-the-scenes songwriter proved impossible as his condition worsened. Gilmour later admitted that he and the others carried deep guilt for years, knowing they had replaced their friend, but also believing they had no other choice. The final turning point came on January 26, 1968, when the band was driving to Southampton University for a show. Someone asked casually, "Shall we pick Sid up?" And another replied, "Let's not bother." That small exchange marked the end of Barrett's time in Pink Floyd, though the band did not announce his departure until April 6, 1968. Drummer Nick Mason later said that Gilmour had been the difference between light and dark for the group's survival. From that point forward, Gilmour carried a heavy burden. He was not only expected to play Barrett's guitar parts, but also to sing his songs, something none of the others wanted to do. He later admitted the weight of performing the work of the very friend he had replaced left him with lasting guilt. At the same time, his arrival saved Pink Floyd, allowing the band to evolve into the progressive rock powerhouse it became. In 1973, David Gilmour was just 26 years old when he discovered a 16-year-old girl named Kate Bush. A family friend had passed him a demo tape, and the moment he heard her voice, he knew there was something extraordinary about her. He personally funded her career development for the next 3 years, paying for around 50 professional demo recordings before convincing EMI to give her a chance. At first, the record label executives were doubtful. One even admitted they thought Gilmour had wasted 2 years and sold them a dud. Bush herself was absolutely terrified the first time she met the Pink Floyd guitarist. But Gilmour stood by her. He went on to produce 2 songs on her debut album, The Kick Inside, including The Man with the Child in His Eyes. All of this happened while Pink Floyd was in the middle of recording Wish You Were Here, showing how Gilmour's ability to spot revolutionary talent never slowed, even during his own creative peak. Kate Bush sarebbe poi diventata una delle artiste più influenti che la Gran Bretagna abbia mai prodotto, dimostrando che l'istinto di Gilmour aveva avuto ragione fin dall'inizio. 3 anni prima, al Festival dell'Isola di Wight del 1970, Gilmour si era ritrovato a interpretare un ruolo inaspettato in una delle esibizioni più leggendarie della storia della musica. Era andato come un normale fan, accampato in una tenda come tutti gli altri. Ma dietro le quinte, mentre Jimi Hendrix stava per esibirsi, scoppiò il caos. I tecnici del suono, tra cui il roadie dei Pink Floyd Peter Watts e Charlie Watkins della Wham, erano nel panico su come gestire il complicato impianto audio di Hendrix. Disperati, chiesero aiuto e Gilmour intervenne per gestire il mixer dal lato del palco. Finì per contribuire a realizzare l'epico set di 18 canzoni di Hendrix, che includeva Purple Haze, Foxy Lady e Cover Come Sergeant, Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band dei Beatles e All Along the Watchtower di Bob Dylan. Gilmour aveva incontrato Hendrix solo una volta prima e non lo conosceva personalmente, ma quella sera dimostrò che la sua brillantezza tecnica andava ben oltre la chitarra. Il suo intervento discreto fece sì che la storica performance di Hendrix raggiungesse il pubblico esattamente come avrebbe dovuto. Ma mentre il talento di Gilmour sollevava gli altri, i Pink Floyd stessi stavano iniziando a sgretolarsi. La registrazione di The Dark Side of the Moon si protrasse per 60 estenuanti giorni agli Abbey Road Studios, tra maggio 1997 e febbraio 1997. Le tensioni divamparono presto. Roger Waters voleva un suono asciutto e minimalista, mentre Gilmour insisteva sullo stile ricco e riverberante che era diventato il suo marchio di fabbrica. Nick Mason in seguito affermò che questi furono i primi segnali di gravi fratture nel gruppo. Sebbene la visione di Gilmour alla fine avesse prevalso, Waters sentiva che la sua autorità era sotto attacco. Il loro perfezionismo li spinse a utilizzare registratori avanzati, Studer E80 a 16 tracce, spesso richiedendo copie di seconda generazione solo per fare spazio. Waters diventò sempre più autoritario, arrivando persino a interrogare lo staff su follia, violenza e morte per gli elementi parlati dell'album. Quando il disco divenne uno degli album più venduti della storia, Waters ammise di aver attraversato una crisi di fiducia. Da socialista, dovette scegliere tra i suoi ideali e il denaro, e scelse il denaro. Fu l'inizio di una frattura che alla fine avrebbe diviso la band. 2 anni dopo, 1975, i Pink Floyd iniziarono a registrare Wish You Were Here, un tributo al loro ex compagno di band, Syd Barrett. Il peso emotivo era schiacciante. Il cuore dell'album, Shine On You Crazy Diamond, si sviluppò da sole 4 note, sviluppate da Gilmour in un'epopea in 9 parti. Ma il momento più toccante arrivò quando Barrett stesso apparve all'improvviso ad Abbey Road. Patti Mad Patti, Bay Road. Sovrappeso e irriconoscibile, chiese se poteva contribuire all'omaggio scritto per lui. Waters in seguito descrisse quel momento come assolutamente straziante. Sebbene Gilmour ammettesse di non aver mai eseguito la canzone senza ricordare Syd, la registrazione stessa rispecchiava la loro unità in declino. What had once been collaborative now leaned heavily toward Waters, leaving Gilmour increasingly sidelined. When Waters first played the finished album for his wife, she burst into tears. The tribute to their lost friend had become a warning of the creative collapse waiting just ahead. By 1977, the album Animals made the fracture undeniable. Recorded at their Britannia Row studio between April 1976 and early 1977. It marked Roger Waters' complete dominance. He wrote every track except Dogs, which was co-written with Gilmour. For the first time, Richard Wright received no composer credits at all, while Nick Mason's input was minimal. Gilmour, distracted by the birth of his first child, contributed little beyond his co-writing role. The band's earlier songs, Raving and Drooling and You've Got to Be Crazy, were reshaped by Waters into Sheep and Dogs to fit his vision. When Waters and Mason accidentally erased one of Gilmour's guitar solos, session musician Snowy White was brought in to replace it, though his work was omitted from the vinyl release. It was a symbolic moment showing how little Gilmour's role now mattered in Waters' eyes. The music was more aggressive, more political, and far more reflective of Waters' personal vision than the collaborative Pink Floyd that had once existed. Ironically, these years also brought immense financial success. Between 1974 and 1977, The Dark Side of the Moon alone sold over 45 million copies and stayed on the Billboard charts for more than 14 years. The band left Capitol Records for Columbia and received a $1 million advance, equal to about $6.4 million in 2024. Waters and Wright bought large country houses, and Mason indulged his love for collecting expensive cars. By 1976, Pink Floyd's finances were being handled by the Norton Warburg Group, who acted as both advisors and collecting agents. But the wealth couldn't hide the growing alienation inside the band. While millions of fans connected deeply with songs about disconnection and isolation, the musicians themselves were drifting apart. Their tours brought in massive revenues, yet the money became another source of tension, especially when financial problems later in the decade forced them to keep working together despite their broken relationships. By the time of The Wall in 1979, the warning signs had turned into open war. Roger Waters arrived with a 90-minute demo and expected the band to simply execute it. David Gilmour later admitted that Waters was in complete control. It was his concept, his lyrics, his vision, and the others were reduced to carrying out his orders. Producer Bob Ezrin pushed for Gilmour's songs Comfortably Numb and Run Like Hell to be included. But Waters only allowed it under pressure. The studio atmosphere turned toxic. Richard Wright stava lottando contro la depressione, un matrimonio in crisi e la dipendenza dalla cocaina, il che lo rendeva un bersaglio facile per le critiche incessanti di Waters. Gilmour disse che Waters faceva sentire Rick inutile, mettendo in discussione ogni sua mossa fino a fargli crollare la fiducia in se stesso. Alla fine Wright fu costretto ad andarsene, pur continuando a lavorare come musicista pagato per i concerti dal vivo. Lo studio stesso divenne un campo di battaglia. Waters respinse le idee senza spiegazioni, chiese infinite revisioni e creò un'atmosfera di paura. I membri della band non lavoravano più insieme, ma registravano separatamente, come estranei. Anche dettagli banali causarono litigi esplosivi, come quando Gilmour e Waters si scontrarono su quale traccia di batteria usare in Comfortably Numb. Il montaggio divenne così complicato che fu necessario unire i nastri a 16 tracce per soddisfare entrambi gli ego. Quando The Wall fu finalmente pubblicato, il suo successo diede a Waters ancora più potere. L'album rimase in cima alle classifiche statunitensi per 15 settimane, raggiunse il terzo posto nel Regno Unito e vendette oltre 30 milioni di copie. Per Waters. Questa fu la prova che il suo approccio autoritario funzionava. Gli altri si sentivano come dipendenti di una band che avevano costruito insieme. Lo stesso Gilmour ammise di essere stato ridotto a poco più di un chitarrista turnista. Il naturale legame musicale che un tempo aveva reso i Pink Floyd così straordinari era svanito. I soldi e il successo non riuscivano più a nascondere la verità. All'inizio degli anni '80, David Gilmour cadde in una dipendenza dalla cocaina che gli distrusse quasi la vita. In seguito ammise in alcune interviste: bevevo molto. Facevo un sacco di cocaina. Tutta quella roba, descrivendo quegli anni come un periodo di tortura. La dipendenza era così grave che gli costò il primo matrimonio e quasi la fine della sua carriera. Non si trattava di un uso occasionale. Era una vera e propria dipendenza che lo prosciugava sia fisicamente che emotivamente. La cocaina divenne così comune che, durante le cene di beneficenza, spariva a metà pasto con il suo manager per farne uso, infrangendo le promesse fatte alle persone che gli volevano bene. Il suo uso era così intenso che amici e familiari temevano davvero che non potesse sopravvivere. Polly Sampson, che in seguito sarebbe diventata sua moglie, ricordava che in quel periodo la morte sembrava l'esito più probabile se non fosse cambiato. La cosa più spaventosa era che Gilmour non si rendeva nemmeno conto di quanto fosse precipitato. Anni dopo, ammise: non mi rendevo conto di essere fuori controllo, ma probabilmente sì. Tra il 1980 e il 1984, la sua vita gli stava scivolando via. Diceva di avere problemi con la sua band, le sue relazioni e tutto il resto, ma la droga lo aveva reso cieco ai danni che stava causando. La cocaina non era solo una parte dei suoi weekend, era diventata la sua normale routine quotidiana, rendendolo incapace di vedere la realtà con chiarezza. I suoi compagni di band e gli amici più cari potevano solo guardare mentre uno dei più grandi chitarristi del rock sembrava sgretolarsi davanti a loro. La situazione non fece che peggiorare durante la registrazione dell'album dei Pink Floyd del 1983, The Final Cut. Gilmour accusò Roger Waters di averlo trasformato in un suo progetto solista a nome della band. La tensione esplose quando Waters cercò di riciclare brani scartati da The Wall. Gilmour lo affrontò, chiedendogli: se queste canzoni non erano abbastanza buone per The Wall, perché dovrebbero esserlo adesso? Il titolo provvisorio originale era addirittura Spare Bricks, un riferimento agli avanzi. Waters controllava l'intero progetto, riducendo Gilmour e Nick Mason a poco più che turnisti. Per Gilmour non si trattava solo di un disaccordo artistico. Era la sensazione che i Pink Floyd fossero stati dirottati da una sola persona, pur continuando a usare il nome della band per vendere dischi. Tra il 1982 e il 1983, il suo mondo stava crollando da tutte le parti. In seguito ammise di aver avuto difficoltà con il mio gruppo pop, con le mie relazioni e tutto quel genere di cose. La cocaina peggiorò tutto. Le sessioni di registrazione divennero sempre più difficili. Il suo modo di suonare e la sua concentrazione ne risentirono. Il suo primo matrimonio stava andando a rotoli. Persino le sue amicizie con Nick Mason e Rick Wright erano quasi distrutte. Dopo che Waters aveva costretto Wright a lasciare la band durante le sessioni di The Wall, solo per riassumerlo come turnista, l'alchimia del gruppo era stata avvelenata. Gilmour si descriveva come isolato, incapace di relazionarsi in modo significativo con chiunque a causa del muro che la sua dipendenza aveva costruito intorno a lui. Poi arrivò una svolta. A metà degli anni '80, Polly Sampson entrò nella sua vita. Madre single, ha stabilito limiti fermi fin dall'inizio. Gli ha detto che l'uso di droghe era un argomento irrinunciabile e che non lo sopportava. Quando hanno iniziato la loro relazione, intorno al 1990, gli ha dato un ultimatum chiaro. Se lo fai di nuovo, me ne vado. Una sera, a una cena di beneficenza a Belgravia, Gilmour scomparve per fare uso di cocaina con la sua manager, infrangendo la promessa che le aveva fatto. Al suo ritorno, Sampson lo aggredì con la domanda: hai appena preso cocaina? Lui lo ammise. Gli gettò dello champagne in faccia e corse lungo Park Lane, con Gilmour che la inseguiva e le prometteva disperatamente: non lo farò mai più. Quella fu l'ultima volta che toccò la droga. Entrambi in seguito dissero di essersi salvati la vita a vicenda. Lei pretendendo la sua sobrietà, lui dandole l'amore e la stabilità di cui aveva bisogno. Proprio quando la sua vita personale iniziava a stabilizzarsi, la sua vita professionale affrontò un'altra guerra. Nel dicembre 1985, Roger Waters lasciò i Pink Floyd, ma non aveva ancora chiuso con la band. Nell'ottobre del 1986 si rivolse all'Alta Corte per cercare di sciogliere completamente i Pink Floyd e impedire loro di usare il nome. Waters paragonò i Floyd senza di lui a Paul McCartney e Ringo Starr, che registravano dischi e andavano in tournée, chiamandosi Beatles. Sosteneva che la band fosse una forza creativa esaurita. La posta in gioco era enorme. La CBS Records aveva i diritti di un altro album dei Pink Floyd. e se non fosse stato consegnato sarebbero seguite pesanti sanzioni finanziarie. Waters credeva che distruggere la band avrebbe protetto la sua eredità, lasciando Gilmour e Mason in rovina finanziaria. Allo stesso tempo, Waters lanciò una campagna pubblica per presentarsi come l'unica mente creativa dei Pink Floyd. Disse alla stampa che continuare senza di lui sarebbe stato un insulto al lavoro svolto in precedenza. Insinuò persino di essere stato costretto a dimettersi, proprio come era successo a Syd Barrett. Voleva che il mondo credesse che Gilmour e Mason fossero solo turnisti, incapaci di portare avanti la band senza di lui. Visitò persino i loro studi di registrazione, con il produttore Bob Ezrin, che in seguito insinuò che Waters li stesse spiando. Come azionista dei Pink Floyd, Waters poteva bloccare le decisioni finanziarie, lasciando Gilmour e Mason costantemente sotto pressione. Le battaglie legali si trascinarono per tutto il 1986 e il 1987, prosciugando denaro ed energie da tutte le parti coinvolte. Waters ammise in seguito che se non si fosse raggiunto un accordo, le ripercussioni finanziarie mi avrebbero completamente annientato. Le controversie includevano cause legali sulla partnership stessa, sui pagamenti delle commissioni e sulle minacce della casa discografica. Il fatto che la partnership della band non fosse mai stata formalmente legalizzata fornì a Waters un'arma potente. Il team di Gilmour rispose minacciando cause legali a sua volta. Il caso divenne così noto che la copertura della faida da parte di Rolling Stone nel novembre 1987 divenne il numero più venduto dell'anno. La pressione era così intensa che le sessioni di registrazione dovettero essere spostate a Los Angeles per evitare continue interruzioni da parte degli avvocati di Londra. Il costo emotivo fu immenso. Gilmour disse in seguito che era stato devastante combattere in tribunale contro qualcuno che un tempo considerava un caro collaboratore. Waters continuò a screditare il loro lavoro, definendo la loro nuova musica una falsificazione piuttosto convincente. Nick Mason ammise che la tensione era insopportabile, con procedimenti legali che interrompevano persino il processo creativo. Waters, ancora azionista, poté partecipare alle riunioni del consiglio di amministrazione, costringendo i suoi ex amici a confrontarsi con lui, nonostante l'amarezza aumentasse. Finalmente, il 23 dicembre 1987, si raggiunse un accordo. Era così complesso che persino i migliori avvocati fecero fatica a formularlo correttamente. Alla fine, il tribunale accettò una semplice versione dattiloscritta dal commercialista Jerome Walton come accordo ufficiale. In base ai termini, Gilmour e Mason ottennero pieni diritti per continuare a suonare come Pink Floyd, mentre Waters mantenne la proprietà del concept del muro e del maiale gonfiabile di Animals. Il primo test dei nuovi Pink Floyd arrivò rapidamente. Il loro album, A Momentary Lapse of Reason, uscì il 7 settembre 1987 e raggiunse il terzo posto sia nella classifica britannica che in quella statunitense, rimanendo nella classifica degli album del Regno Unito per 34 settimane. Entro il 18 gennaio 1988 ottenne il doppio disco di platino negli Stati Uniti e in seguito il quadruplo. Superò in vendite l'album solista di Waters, Radio Chaos, e dimostrò che i Pink Floyd potevano prosperare anche senza di lui. The victory continued in 1994 with The Division Bell. Released on March 28th, it reached number one in more than 10 countries, including both the UK and US. Within months, it was certified double platinum in the US and eventually went triple platinum. It sold more than 3 million copies worldwide and gave Pink Floyd their first Grammy Award, when Marooned won Best Rock Instrumental Performance in 1995. For the band, it was more than commercial success. It was validation that their creative spark remained strong. Their tours became legendary. The A Momentary Lapse of Reason tour between 1987 and 1989 lasted nearly 2 years, with around 200 concerts drawing 5.5 million people worldwide. In the US alone, they were the second highest grossing act of 1,987 and the highest of 1,988, earning nearly $60 million. They performed in places they had never been before, from the Palace of Versailles to Moscow's Olympic Stadium, and even a free show on a barge in Venice's Grand Canal. The Division Bell Tour in 1994 broke records as the highest-grossing rock tour of its time, with massive stages, 53 trucks, and a crew of 161 people. In February 2023, the music world was stunned when Polly Sampson launched a furious attack on Roger Waters through Twitter. On February 6th, she wrote that he was anti-Semitic to your rotten core and went on to call him a Putin apologist, a lying, thieving, hypocritical, tax-avoiding, lip-syncing, misogynistic, sick with envy megalomaniac. The outburst came just after Waters had given an interview to the German newspaper Berliner Zeitung, where he defended comparing Israel to Nazi Germany and claimed that Israelis were committing genocide. What made the moment even more shocking was David Gilmour's response. He shared Sampson's post and added only 3 words, every word demonstrably true. It was the first time Gilmour had ever publicly backed such harsh language against his former bandmate. Waters quickly answered, saying he was aware of the incendiary and wildly inaccurate comments and that he was taking advice as to his position, suggesting he might take legal action. For many fans, this very public exchange marked the final collapse of decades of uneasy silence between the two men. The rift only deepened the following year. In October 2024, during interviews with The Guardian and The Independent, Gilmour, now 78, was asked directly about the possibility of performing with Waters again. His answer was short and absolute. Absolutely not. He explained that he avoided people who openly supported leaders like Vladimir Putin and Nicolas Maduro, calling them genocidal and autocratic. He added that nothing could make him share a stage with someone who thought such treatment of women and the LGBT community was acceptable. The timing was striking, coming soon after reports that Pink Floyd had sold their music rights to Sony for about $400 million. Gilmour made it clear that money was not his reason for speaking out. He said he simply wanted to get out of what he described as the mud bath that it has been for quite a while. His final remark was cutting. He said he would rather play with Rick Wright, the band's keyboardist who had died in 2008, than ever stand beside Waters again. The tension was not only personal, but also digital. In 2020, Waters posted a video on his Twitter account accusing Gilmour of keeping him completely off the official Pink Floyd website and social media platforms. At 81, Waters described it as being erased from the band he had helped found in 1965. He claimed that Gilmour wanted to be seen as the sole face of Pink Floyd. The fight over online presence has roots in the 1987 legal settlement that allowed Waters to keep the rights to the wall, but gave up all claims to the Pink Floyd name and brand. For Waters, the exclusion felt especially painful. He was the original founder, yet he had no say in how the band was presented to the world. Some fans mocked him, saying he could just pay $11.99 to start his own website. The irony was sharp, since Waters had earned more than $300 million from touring the wall, yet was locked out of the band's digital identity. By the time Gilmour reached 79, his patience had run out. For decades, he had spoken little about Waters, but in 2024, his interviews took a different tone. He finally opened up about what he called Waters' detrimental influence on the band. He recalled how in 1983, during the making of the final cut, Waters dominated the process to the point where the album became almost entirely his vision. Gilmour also dismissed the later album, A Momentary Lapse of Reason, which was created without Waters, calling it a pretty fair forgery. Speaking to Rolling Stone, he explained that selling Pink Floyd's catalogue was partly about stepping away from the endless arguments and constant decisions that kept the band's legacy in turmoil.